World War I became one of the most violent and deadly conflicts in the history of the world. Over the 5 year period from 1914 to 1919, the nations of Europe were divided into one of two groups. The first, known as the Allied powers, is depicted by the green countries on the map. The second, their rival, the Central Powers, is designated by the orange countries on the map. While a small number of countries were able to remain neutral and did not become involved in the war, over the 5 years from 1914 to 1919, the Allied and Central Powers waged war that cost millions of people their lives, destroyed countless cities and towns throughout Europe, and even forced the United States to become involved from across the Atlantic Ocean in hopes of ending the bloody conflict. The origins of World War I can be traced back to a series of events that occurred involving European countries in the late 1800s and early 1900s. These events were capped off with the assassination of Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which became the spark that ignited the war. During the period leading up to World War I, Europe had been a relatively peaceful place. From June 1815 to June 1914, there had not been any serious war or conflict in Europe as a result of the decisions at the Congress of Vienna. As you will recall, the Congress of Vienna was the meeting held after Napoleon had been defeated in 1815. Once he was removed from power, the members of the Congress worked together to deal with international conflicts throughout Europe. At the Congress, they created the countries of Belgium and Luxembourg in order to create a buffer between France and Germany, which had developed as rivals during Napoleon's reign. They also made agreements to handle conflicts collectively as a group of nations and worked to achieve a balance of power where no country was any more powerful than another. This balance of power resulted in the countries not being willing to start a war with each other and led to them focusing their efforts on the colonization of Africa, India, and China that we've looked at previously in class. Over that time period known as the Age of Imperialism, the European nations took a variety of actions that led to a disruption in the peace that had been created by the Congress of Vienna. As a result of their competition for colonies, the nations of Europe took a series of actions that led to the development of three trends that would cause the peace in Europe to end. The first trend is nationalism. Nationalism can be defined as having a strong sense of pride and confidence in one's country. And during the period from 1815 to 1914, France and Germany each developed very strong senses of nationalism. Each country felt that they should be the most powerful in Europe and should dominate the events that occurred throughout the continent. Second was a sense of militarism. During the competition for colonies, the nations of Europe each worked to build up their military so that they could carry troops, goods, and supplies to and from their new colonies in Africa, India, and China. This competition led to the development of larger armies and navies and created a rivalry between Britain and Germany for control of the oceans and ocean travel. Third, we saw the nations of Europe start to build alliances. The competition for colonies and fear of other countries overpowering them resulted in the nations of Europe making a whole series of alliances leading up to World War I. These alliances were designed to protect each other and try to continue the balance of power that had been shaped by the Congress of Vienna. However, what would ultimately happen is that these alliances would drag countries into a conflict that they otherwise would not have become involved with. Leading up to World War I, there were two major alliances that were created that shaped the way the map was divided into the Allied and Central Powers. The first of the major alliances was the Triple Alliance that included the countries of Germany, Italy, and Austria. This would be the foundation for what became the Central Powers at the beginning of the war. The second alliance was known as the Triple Entente and included the countries of England, France, and Russia. This would become the foundation for what became the alliance known as the Allied Powers. In addition to the two major alliances, there were a series of smaller or minor alliances that developed involving the countries of Europe. The first was an alliance between Germany and the Ottoman Empire. The second was an alliance between England and the country of Japan, which was emerging as an important world power in Asia. And the third was an alliance involving Britain, France, and Belgium. These minor alliances would ultimately draw in countries that were not initially involved in World War I, forcing them to join the bloody war. Militarism, alliances, and nationalism were the building blocks for World War I. However, it took one additional event to start the conflict and begin the war. That event is known as the Guns of August. The Guns of August occurred when a Serbian youth named Gavrilo Princip, who was a member of a group known as the Black Hand, which was a Serbian nationalist group trying to promote Serbian culture and government, assassinated the Archduke of Austria, a man named Franz Ferdinand. Ferdinand's assassination occurred on a trip to Sarajevo, the capital of the country of Serbia, which had been taken over and claimed by the Austrian Empire. During his visit on June 28, 1914, Princip and the Black Hand carried out their assassination attempt, killing Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. This event was the final straw in starting World War I. After the assassination, Austria issued an ultimatum to Serbia, requiring them to meet a number of conditions, or else they would be attacked and a war would begin between Austria and Serbia. These conditions included turning over anyone connected to the assassination, giving Austria control of an investigation into the assassination, and a variety of other demands that Serbia was ultimately unable and unwilling to agree to. As a result, Serbia did not accept the terms of the ultimatum, and 1 month after the assassination, Austria declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. With that declaration of war, each side reached out to and appealed to its allies for help and defense in the war. Serbia reached out to its ally Russia, and Austria reached out to its ally Germany once Russia agreed to support and defend Serbia. This started a domino effect where each of the countries of Europe, because of their alliances, was pulled in to a much larger conflict that became known as World War I and divided Europe into the Allied and Central Powers that we will be looking at next week.